Hello everybody and welcome back to the Dice Tower. I'm Zee Garcia.
I'm Camilla.
Today we are taking a look at this big box game right here called Arkeis. This one is a dungeon crawl style game set in a fictional Egyptian setting that is sort of steampunky, mechanical in nature, yes. Has some mysteries, has some sort of suspense, and you are going through a story, discovering some things and cooperating, exploring some tombs and the like. So let me go ahead and give you a look at how this all works. I'm going to be giving you sort of a rough overview of how the game's going to play. It's a scenario-based game. You go through various chapters in it. So I'm just going to be showing you a little bit of the tutorial, the first one. I'll be avoiding spoilers, but ideally it'll give you enough to understand some of the moving parts. Here we go. Each of these boxes over here contains the necessary components for that chapter, that episode as they're called, in the story. And it is basically a one-shot through these chapters, generally speaking. You have the expedition logbook over here, and you're going to be using this to learn how to play and go through the stories. So, besides this, there is also a rule book, and there's also this book over here, which has some stickers to update what you need to do and sort of the things you've unlocked in this book here. But generally speaking, we're just going to stick to the tutorial episode. I don't want to spoil anything. This is going to tell you how to set up the board, and it's going to explain to you a few things that are happening. This actually takes you through turn by turn what to do, has you reading from the book and so on, and then explains to you what happens after you're done for the epilogue, where you go back to camp. Camp is at the back of this book, and you are going to, it's back here, you are going to put some stickers there, have some special abilities that you are able to gather once you go through one of these episodes, all right? Now over here, you would be marking off locations, and then eventually you get the epilogue. There was a sticker here which was removed to test the removable nature of the stickers, and well, you can see it kind of scarred the page here a little bit. We'll talk more about that later on. There's also no markings here because this was done with a photocopy of the book, all right? And so just played on that. I got a whole stack of those sheets. So that's how this is going to work out. Let me go ahead and set up some of the boards here on the table and just give you a very brief overview and idea of how the game plays so that you understand what's happening. No spoilers again past this opening episode, so I'm only going to be using this box, and then you should have an idea of what's going on in the game. Here we go. Here we're taking a look at Scenario 0. This is the tutorial setup, mostly, and ready to begin. So every player is going to have a character. That character has a backpack to track your stuff from scenario to scenario. So you'll keep in here anything you discover and various other things you need to keep track of. The game will tell you how to set this up. Sometimes the map is unchanging. Sometimes, depending on the scenario, you'll uncover new rooms as you go. But generally speaking, you put out these cardboard cubes or, boxes. You put these doors in between them, and you stick a little symbol in there. You link them together, and then many of these things will go out there exactly where it tells you they go. In this scenario, we begin out here in this sandy outside area before we walk into this area. So everybody, like I said, has a board. You have spaces for your wounds, a little turn structure breakdown, and then some spaces to hold some cards. There's also a couple of different kinds of dice, and then these tokens here, which are generally the clock in the game. So what is the flow of the game? Well, it's pretty straightforward. The idea is every player on their turn is going to take 2 actions, and the different actions you can take tie to these different kinds of abilities. But to be a little bit more specific, let's go ahead and zoom in on one of these, and I'll show you the turn structured right on it. So here we are taking a close-up look at Frank. It tells you a little backstory about him. Has an ability, and then over here places to hold wounds, as well as the turn structure. So we're going to focus on that. First, you apply any start of turn effects, anything that says it happens at that point. Then you're going to apply the start of turn effects of adversaries you are grappling with. What that means is you are in your room with any baddies. The way that works is if a card tells you that you spawn some baddies, you are going to put them wherever they are. So for example, you might have a little scarab that's in the room with you, or you might have perhaps a scorpion in the room with you. Here you go. And you are going to draw a card of that type. So there's a stack of these cards for each character type. You will randomly get one of these the first time you encounter one. And you're going to keep this card for the rest of that scenario. So we're going to go ahead and flip this over. So the start of turn effect lets us know right there that if I am grappling with this adversary, i.e. I'm in the space with them, I need to do this right here, all right? So I'm gonna have to add one scarab to each zone in that room. The zones are sort of the squares inside of the room because they get bigger. There's the one size ones, the two size ones, and there's even a big 2x2 big room, okay? So there we go. So I have to do that. Then I get to reorganize my equipment, change anything that I've got around my character here. And then lastly, I get two actions. What are those actions? They're very simple. I can move. So it's basically these actions are the actions. I can move from one room to an adjacent room as long as the door connecting them is open. I can attack if I'm with a character. To attack, I would roll 2 dice normally, though Frank's ability here says I roll an extra die, and we'll come back to that in 1 second. I can help someone by giving them something I have, or by using a card that's sitting right here. Or I could search, which is how I interact with the doors and how I interact with those tokens that have been preset on the table, on the board, okay? So let's go back to combat here. So we have a scarab. Let's assume I am grappling with the scarab and I intend to attack. I'm going to be rolling a number of dice, normally 2 again, but Frank here gets to roll an extra one. And then I'm going to check what happens. Let's say I'm in the room with 2 scarabs. I'm going to roll these dice. There we go. And then I'm going to check these symbols from the top over here to the bottom. So the first one means I check all of these. For every one of those, I eliminate 1 scarab. The next one would be this one. It says I eliminate 1 scarab and I take 1 injury. Fine, so I will take an injury by putting that right there, and I eliminate the other scarab. And now that they're all gone, I stop resolving. So this one I do not do. These are done. And now that I'm no longer with any scarabs, this I can flip face down. If you ever roll this face on the dice, you are allowed to take one of these to change this into any result you want to. And that's going to be very powerful, but you want to be careful you don't end up with too many of these because they go into your backpack and various things might happen if you have too many of them. So you want to use that sparingly to make a blank result into something particularly positive. Now, as far as these wounds go, if I ever would take the 5th one, I don't. I instead take a trauma card and I clear the wounds, and these are going to affect me in a variety of different ways, keeping me from doing various actions, that sort of thing. Now, these locations, like I said, can be given cards. So, for example, let's say I'm in the tunnel, I'm in the layout, I'm searching, I discover something. Every time you do this, you are going to read a card. Perhaps my first action as Frank here is to investigate this door. So I could look for that symbol in this matching stack, and I am going to read that card. So I would go in here, I would take this, and it says the entrance is to the building is buried. Rebecca mentioned it was down below, a few steps away from the macabre discovery. Go back to the tutorial. Okay, so a little story. This will open up, and then I can walk through that, so I can take an action to go in here. And then these tokens are going to be encounters, items, that sort of thing. So for example, let's say I've opened up all these doors, I've made it all the way over here, and I interact with this one here. So you find that matching symbol, I would check that card, and this lets me know that it's a weapon, it's a crowbar. And the reason I know that is because it has this symbol which means it matches up to this one right here. The crowbar says roll 1 extra die when you roll fight dice. Great. That means for me, I'm going to be rolling 2 extra dice because I have a built-in ability for that already. And again, don't forget you can trade these with other players if you're in the same space with them and you take a trading helping ability here. So these spots are going to be able to hold cards that modify and enhance your abilities and let you, change the things you can do. So that's what you're doing. You are taking 2 very simple actions. Sometimes it's just move, move. That's it. That's your turn. Or interact with these things with the search, fight if you are with a baddie, that sort of thing. That's what's happening. Sometimes the game will also tell you to roll some of these dice and log the results. And that's where you get those markings in the book, where you are going to go in here in the book. You are going to mark these locations based on what you rolled. And if you get the entire line across, you get some money, which is used for buying camp upgrades. You get some XP, which lets you get character upgrades, new abilities. You also might complete a column, and then you get to see this card over here. So that sort of thing is going to happen, and they're all going to have a little bit of that. All right, so there we go. That's the game. We're going to go ahead and talk about it. Like I said, this is a game that has a bunch of little chapters in it, and you are going through that mostly once. There's like a little sort of repeatable stuff at the end, but it's basically one shot through. So we've each individually written down some things we liked and things we didn't like, because I'll just go out and say it now. It's a bit of a conflicting one. I think we both feel this way.
It is. There's highs and there's lows, and there's even points that I struggle to be like, on one point, I really like it because of this. But also that same thing bothers me. You know, it's a real kind of pendulation of emotions as I thought about this game.
Right. So we're going to start with the positive stuff. How about that? We're going to start with the things we liked.
All right.
And then we'll come back around and tell you sort of the reasons why it's maybe not getting a glowing score. So I'm going to start with one that's very obvious and the first thing that's going to hit you. And honestly, there's a big influence as to whether you might want to check this out or not. That's, of course, the theme and the setting.
Yes.
And kind of hand in hand with that, I guess we'll go the artwork, you know what I mean? But this has a really cool Egyptian slash, I don't know, steampunky...
Supernatural?
Mechanical, scorpions thing and other creatures, whatever. And it's a really cool idea. I love that. I love mixing genres a little bit. Like, Western vampires. Love it. Cool. Right. This is another one of those that falls very much into that category for me. Egyptian, archaeological, Indiana Jones type stuff, mechanical creatures.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's cool.
And it really plays into that as well as you're going through I'm going to call it a campaign. I think we'll talk more about that later. Sure. Is it campaign? Is it legacy? Spoiler, I don't know. But we'll talk more about that later. But it does, as you go through those scenarios and through the campaign, you see more of that. It's not just that the mechanical nature, the supernatural is not just a setting. It is incorporated into that as you begin your investigations, as weird things start happening. And so I think it does do a really good job of not just painting a good picture, but putting you in the world and seeing the benefit and how that would change kind of this alternate reality, alternate history kind of scenario.
Another thing from the looks point of view is the miniatures. I think the miniatures, and I didn't show you too many of the miniatures actually. You got in the overview there, I showed you the scarabs there and everything, and then the scorpions, you get to see them. But there are some, not a lot of miniatures in this game, but the ones that are in it are stunning.
And I think that it is. They're really well done. They're really unique. They match the artwork, which is huge for me. I love that. Yeah. And then I actually really like that there's not that many miniatures in it. For a game, for a box of this size, there's not that many. There's a scorpion, like you said, and you're going to use that in multiple of those scenarios. But they also mitigate that by giving you different boss cards for them. So for the scorpion, let's say, I don't know the exact, but let's say there's 8 cards, you're going to shuffle them up, and each player is going to get one. Right,
so when I'm dealing with scorpions, they behave a little differently than when you're dealing with those scorpions.
Yes, so the minis are fantastic. They're selling you on this theme and this setting that's really great. But then it still ends up being this streamlined kind of process where it feels fresh for each person and for each gameplay.
Right.
I really like that.
Well, speaking of streamline, we should jump into that next. This game is very streamlined. The simplicity of the gameplay, the simplicity of the turns you are taking is also something that I consider to be a positive. This is a game that, we kind of joked about it feeling kind of like my first dungeon crawl, and it sort of is that. The tutorial, the scenario 0 is a tutorial. They walk you through it. And a couple pages in, you kind of go, that's it? Like, what else you got? Oh, that's it. Right. Take 2 actions. It's one of these 4 things. Move. Explore, which is pick the little thing up, read a card. Or the door, read a card. Roll dice for combat. It tells you right there on the scarab or the scorpion or the whatever it is what happens. It's dead simple.
Right.
That's cool. That's nice, and it's refreshing that it's not... that it doesn't bog down. A lot of, dungeon crawls for me, this kind of, miniatures games, it's a little daunting bringing them to the table, especially after some time has gone by. And this one isn't. You
could read through the tutorial after putting this game down for 6 months. Just read through the 3-4 pages that it is and remember how to play and jump back into your campaign. I like that. That's very refreshing to me. I feel like it does streamline it without losing any of that kind of epic feel to it. It really, again, lets you focus on the gameplay and the story that you're going through. I think it's definitely more story focused.
It does put that story first, yeah.
Right, but I also don't feel like you lose mechanism. So for example, you have this equipment and it's not like you can just willy-nilly do whatever you want. There's one point in your turn that you can change your equipment.
Right.
But you can do it every turn.
Right.
And I like that. I find it very comfortable play, very comfortable gameplay.
Yeah, we didn't run into any of those like, oh, I have a timing issue, I have a problem with how do I resolve when can I do that? No, that's it's everything is apparent.
Yeah.
Because it's so clean and simple. There's no timing windows. There is no conflict. There's none of those things are going to happen. It's not a trading card game. It is not a big epic miniatures game. You're not going to deal with that stuff. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
You already talked about, I had written down as well, the way enemies behave differently for every player. And then I really like also the player boards and the way that things plug into that. I think that looks cool visually, and also, again, kind of cleans up that play. This is one that it says on the box 10+, but because the game is so clean and straightforward, everything is so visually pleasing, I think you could go lower than that, especially if the kid is into the mechanical stuff, the Egyptian setting, maybe the theme. There are sort of dead bodies and stuff that you're finding in there. Mummies, well, not mummies, but people. So maybe content, you might want to, be careful with that, but it's so easy they could handle the complexity.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree for sure.
Yeah.
One other thing, you talked about the tutorial, and I want to focus on that for a second. The tutorial is fantastic. You really do read a couple pages and get in, and it's my favorite type of tutorial system where it's not, here's the tutorial. It's like, all right, here's what's happening. Take this move. Now see how this reacts. Now take this move, now see how it reacts. I really think the tutorial system gets this, even for it being such a smaller game, streamlined gameplay, it gets to the table so very quick and comfortably. And I think it's well done that they weren't like, it's a simple enough game, just stick with a rule book. So I really appreciate and respect that decision. And the other thing I wanted to mention as far as a positive, this kind of goes back to that streamlined gameplay. I love the way they handled the cards, because you're going to have the same symbols repeated.
Right.
Which is nice because it's not going to be this huge symbol soup that you're like, it's the one that kind of looks like a mountain. No, there's like 8 symbols and you're going to get them down pretty quick and have your little names for them. But you have multiple colors of those. And so the way it also handles the symbol in the background is a different shape. And so it just, again, has a very smart design to help mitigate those mistakes that oh, I need the Eye of Ra in green, or the Eye of Ra with a diamond background instead of the circle, something like that. So it's also kind of becomes colorblind friendly as well, just very innately. So again, there's still a lot of little smart choices in the decisions that make the gameplay comfortable.
All right. let's go ahead and switch gears then and talk about some things that maybe didn't thrill us, things that left us wanting, okay? I'm going to start with one that is fairly inoffensive, but it is a big deal, especially when the game is this big, and that is the insert. I thought the insert could have been better handled. Well, for one thing, you get box lift, or lid lift, I should say. Right out of the box, you have lid lift, and it comes with these big, honking plastic inserts. They are no longer in here for one miniature, for one big miniature.
Right.
Okay, so it comes with all the cardboard sort of rooms and all of that, which, by the way, is another positive. We should mention that. I really do like the way the map lays out.
It's odd.
And you connect them with the little plastic door thing.
That's fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But then the whole thing sort of has to layer very specifically, and then those big plastic inserts are tremendously wasteful when it comes to space. So I don't like the insert in this. I think it's just badly put together. It does not leave you any wiggle room. This game has expansions that came out for it at the same time, a couple of fairly small things, but you will not fit them in here unless you get rid of that insert. And then they fit incredibly comfortably.
Okay, and then on the flip side of that, once you get rid of them, everything, all the expansions and everything fit in here with room to spare.
Oh, yeah.
So then you have this big box that you're like, but it doesn't need to be that big. I have the base game and 3 expansions in here with extra scenarios and this and that. And so I think, I ended up keeping a couple of them and bagging the rest of the stuff.
Right.
And it's still too much room. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. I love that I can not have to be super careful putting the game back. Of course, I protect it and stuff, but, it doesn't have to finagle in. But it does. A box this big that's taking up that much space on your shelf to after you put everything in the box to have 3-4 inches left on the top is like, oh, could have been a different game I put there. Another game I put in there. Or another expansion, something else. So.
The gameplay, and this is something that kind of goes hand in hand with the simplicity of the game. I find the gameplay to be very repetitive. And that's one of those things that comes from the fact that the game is so simple. On your turn, you take 2 actions. You can move, you can attack if you're with a monster, you can interact. Those are mostly the ones you're going to be using. That means almost every turn is move, read me that card. Okay, move, roll the dice. Roll the dice, move. Move, move. Like, that is 90% of your turns in this game.
See, I think
I find that, while, again, the simplicity is lovely, it's so comfortable to play this game, it will be repetitive very quickly, quicker than other dungeon crawl games.
So I agree. I think I disagree with it being repetitive. I think it is repetitive in nature because, yes, you are doing the same thing, but for me personally, having that different story each time is enough, as well as, I don't know if this is something you wrote down on negative, but the game is very, very lucky. There's a lot of dice rolls that swing the game pretty hard.
Yes, I wrote that down.
Oh, you did? Okay, it is very lucky. But for me, those two things kind of balance each other out. Yes, it can get repetitive enough, but it's lucky enough that that's what kind of brings the highs and the lows, as well as the story in each of the different cards. And you finally find the door, but you don't have the key. Where can we get the key? Okay, I need to go over here and explore. So you are doing... there's enough variability between the swinginess and the story that it doesn't feel repetitive, even though I see it is repetitive in nature. For me, the hang-up is more because of that you're only doing 2 things. Sometimes you have 2.5-second turns. Okay, well, I know I need to go over there, so I guess my turn is move, move, next. All right, your turn is move, move, next. All right, your turn is move and read a story or something like that. So it just, sometimes you have very fruitless turns or lame turns, turns. It's just like, oh, all right, I moved, next person. And then you're waiting again for your turn. So for me, it's not that it feels repetitive. It's fresh enough to not feel that daunting repetitive. I just did this same thing. But every game so far, I have had at least 1 turn. And one of them, I had multiple turns where it was just move, 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 move. And that leaves it a little flat.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to group a couple of things here into the big one. In my opinion, what's the big one? And that is, well, it's a few things, but mainly it comes down to, for me, I find this to be an ill-fitting legacy, question mark, campaign, question mark.
It's that question mark. Like,
kind of game. It's also, there's a few chapters. There's not that many. This is a big honking box for a very simple game. This game feels a little like it's wearing a coat that doesn't quite fit. And it doesn't quite know how to get through that finish line. Like, why are there a bunch of stickers, reusable stickers? And yes, I wrote that down very much in air quotes. Those stickers are reusable in the loosest of senses, okay? Why? Why are there stickers? Why is this campaign going in a destructible direction? Why can't this just be played where every one of those stickers is a card? We know you make cards. Why can't my camp just be cards? Just be... Why am I destroying the book? And then I need to either remove the stickers, which don't come up very well, or a reset kit that cannot be found anywhere online. Or, oh, you can download the PDF. That's nice. They now have PDFs available for the, the sticker book and the other book, but it's a PDF. You can't cut that up and do anything with it.
I feel like it kind of lost its identity. And I remember when the Kickstarter campaign was happening, we had a hard time understanding, is it legacy, is it campaign? No, they say it's going to be campaign and can be replayed, so it's not legacy. But there's stickers, so it's kind of confusing. And unfortunately, I think the product didn't help clarify that at all. It's that big question mark of, it's not legacy, but also you really can't play it twice when there was no reason for it to be that way. You could have just gone in and, hey, it is a campaign. Because for a legacy game, it's pretty underwhelming. It's not that big of a game, and it's very few scenarios for a higher price point. So I see why you don't want it to be legacy and be labeled or put in that camp. But at the same time, it's handling a campaign in a legacy way, which makes it more, for me, like almost angst. I don't want to use the stickers because I got to keep it a campaign, not a legacy. I do really appreciate that they have the PDF. When I started it, that was not available. It is available now, and I am more excited about that. I'll just print the PDF and go from there, or have it digitally on my iPad, and be working on it that way. Because I don't mind taking and be like, oh, this was my end result. Cool, cut out that camp, and then I'll tape that onto my camp board, or however I end up doing it. I don't mind that. But that is an extra step that I, as a player, as a consumer, have had to take. That did not have to be there. That could have easily been resolved in production by cards. Give me a little folder journal. We've seen in other games where I get this card and I slide it in my journal, or I have we already have a home backpack. Let me keep that card in my backpack. Give me a dry erase board. I don't care how you did it. I think it was a poor design choice that they could have resolved easily and just clarified, what is this game? It's a campaign game with legacy elements that you're going to have to take an extra step to reset if you want to play it again, which you're probably going to want to play again because it's not as big of a game as the box would suggest.
Yeah, and even though I don't know if I would play it again, because once you know where you should go to get the things, you kind of know. Yes, the luck will make things go differently, but the story will not change, and the things like, oh, I know, if I read this, I'll find a machete. Yeah. So, the next time you read it, it will be a machete again. And the third time you read it, it will also be a machete. There is no...
But you don't need that machete. You need the key. So just forget the machete because the key's over here. And go get that, and then you're good.
Yeah, because you're fighting time, right? I showed you guys in the overview, you're fighting time, so...
Oh, which I love that. Anyway.
It's a great mechanism. So cool. Very clean, very nicely done. But once you've gone through it, it's like, no, don't worry about that. It's over here. Go pick that up. Go over here. We're done with this scenario. So... It just seems like a decision, a bit of a boneheaded decision to make this destructible for no good reason. And that bothers me when this is so big. When it has no need to do that. Also, this is so big. This game, we were talking about this, and I mentioned that recently I've had a couple of reviews in which I described a few games as big games in small packages. And I love that. I love a game that you have a little pocket game or a little something small, and you go, it's a big game. It feels bigger than the box. This is definitely the case of the opposite.
Yeah.
This one feels like a small game in a big box. Mm-hmm. The gameplay is small. The campaign legacy thing is fairly small. But you gotta deal with this Calyx Buster. So
right. Three-quarters of the Calyx.
Yeah,
to
so
give you perspective.
That's unfortunate, you know. Anyway, anything else you want to say?
Nope, I don't think so. I think I'm ready.
All right, so we wanted to give you both, again, the positive and the negative, because we want to be careful that we don't focus on one side too much, because it really is kind of it's a conflicting one. I really am enjoying this game. I've had a good time with it, but those flaws, to me, have become apparent, and it's hard to ignore them.
Right. Yeah.
So for me, for this game, I'm going to come down at a 7 on this one, okay? That's a recommend, but that comes to some caveats. The caveats being, do you like this setting? Do you like the idea of this desert, you know, Egyptian, like I said, Indiana Jones-esque mechanical thing? Are you okay with playing this one time through and then maybe not coming back to it for a while? Are you okay with the, you know, the sticker thing? Are you okay with making your own solution with the PDF? Do you play a lot of games and this is merely one in a big buffet of games? If so, I think you're going to have a good time with it. With it, you know, it's a lovely thing. It's a lovely world to inhabit, an easy world to play in. It's a nice, you know, easy time. But the game is just fights you at every moment, you know, to just let you do what you want to do, to finish it and hand it to someone else and go, here, now you enjoy it with your family. Oh, why can't I do that? So yeah, for me, I'm kind of, you know, I'm coming in at a 7 because I just can't come any lower with the fun I've had with it. Yeah,
I think that's a good way to put it. Is I feel myself capped on both ends.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I can't go any higher than this because of the problems we've talked about, and I can't go any lower than this because I really am enjoying it, and I want to get back into this world and play more. You know, just play it again. But yeah, I'm going to come in at a 7.5 for all the reasons you said, and so I won't beat the dead horse, but I love the theme. I love what the game is doing at the end of every session. I find myself happy and invested in the game. I really am enjoying it. But I don't know what I'm going to do with it afterward. You know, and afterward is not going to be that far in the future because it's a very short campaign. And I think that there were, as not a game designer, some probably pretty easy solutions to it. You know, that we've seen in other games and that kind of stuff, especially after 3 years post Kickstarter. Right. You know, like you had time, you could have done this stuff. That being said, I really am enjoying it. So for me, it's a 7.5.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. 7.5. That is a seal of approval, like we said. So if this is singing to you, especially if you find it on a deal, then yeah, have at it. Enjoy it, you know. But yeah, that's going to do it for us here today. Thanks very much for watching. My name is Zee.
I'm Camilla.
And we'll catch you on the next one. Watch out for the scorpions.